My daughter told me to run the moment my husband's mother arrived while he was away. I thought she was just being dramatic, but her eyes were terrified. Her voice was shaking. That night, I found the documents, the signatures, the insurance, and a plan one I was never supposed to read. At first, I wanted to believe I misunderstood, that I was tired, grieving, but then I saw her handwriting, and his, on papers that had my name, my birthday, my death date, left blank. I sat there, frozen, in my own home, with my daughter sleeping upstairs. My mother-in-law was in the guest room. She said she came to help. She brought wine. She smiled too much. The plan was already in motion. I was just one step behind. Not anymore. I packed the cash, grabbed the passports, and at 4:12 a.m., holding my daughter's hand, I ran. I used to think I was building a peaceful life. My husband Ethan and I moved into the lake house after my mom passed away. She left it to me in her will, a cedarwood home tucked between trees in Vermont. Quiet, cold, beautiful in the fall. It wasn't the kind of place Ethan liked, but he smiled and called it our reset. I believed him. At least, I tried to. Mom died just 3 months after Emma's 6th birthday. It happened fast, complications after a surgery. I was still sorting through her belongings when Ethan suggested we relocate here, for a while, just until things settled. He said the city was too noisy and Emma deserved fresh air. I was too numb to argue, too tired to question anything. The first few weeks were calm. I worked remotely for the gallery. Ethan said he was investing in a startup and had weekly check-ins. Emma was drawing constantly trees, birds, people. Her world looked much more colorful than mine. Ethan was sweet at first. He brought me coffee, walked with Emma down to the lake. He even fixed the old fireplace, said it gave the house soul. But little things started to shift. He began locking his office, staying out late to take phone calls, whispering in the kitchen at midnight. Then came Linda. My mother-in-law always had a presence, tall, polished, and poised like she stepped out of a vintage ad for pearls and passive aggression. She used to call me Claire dear with a tone that made it sound like poor thing. She never hid her disapproval, not of me, not of how I dressed, and definitely not of my job. When Ethan told me she'd be staying just a few nights, I smiled. Outwardly. Inside, I knew better. Linda never did anything casually. She brought 4 suitcases and a leather-bound planner filled with notes. She critiqued the pantry layout within 10 minutes of arrival, called the lake charming but too isolated, and made it very clear that this house, my house, was a burden I wasn't managing well. Emma didn't like her either. I noticed it right away. She got quiet whenever Linda entered the room. No more drawing. No more humming. Just silence. I asked her once, "Do you want to sit with Grandma for a bit?" She shook her head and whispered, "She doesn't like my pictures." The worst part? Linda only acted sweet around Ethan. As soon as he stepped out of the room, the smile vanished. One morning, she folded my laundry, including my underwear, and laid it out on the guest bed. "Just helping," she said. But there was something cold in her eyes. Something watchful. Ethan didn't see it. Or pretended not to. Every time I brought it up, he deflected. "She's just trying," he'd say. "She lost Dad last year. She doesn't mean anything by it." I stopped arguing. Instead, I buried myself in work. Sorting Mom's things. Reviewing estate documents. There were still accounts in her name. Stocks. A life insurance policy I hadn't even touched yet. Ethan never asked about any of it, not directly. But I noticed he lingered when I had paperwork out. He once asked if I needed help wrapping up the estate. I said no. He never asked again. Still, I wanted to believe we were okay. That this was just grief and tension and 2 women who never got along learning to coexist. I told myself Linda would leave soon. That Ethan would go back to being the man I married. That Emma was just adjusting. But then came the night I woke up to whispering outside my door. A voice too deep to be Linda. Too calm to be accidental. I got up, pressed my ear to the hallway wall. And for a brief second, I thought I heard my name. Claire. Like a warning. Or a farewell. I told myself I misheard it. Maybe it was the wind. Or some creak in the old walls. But the way my heart dropped when I heard my name, it didn't feel like imagination. Still, I went back to bed. Pretended nothing happened. I was good at that. The next morning, Linda made French toast. She never cooked. She placed the plate down with a smile that didn't reach her eyes and said, "You need your strength." Ethan was already gone. He left early, said he had a meeting in Burlington. He kissed Emma on the forehead and told her, "Daddy will bring back a surprise." She didn't smile. Later that afternoon, I caught her sitting by the window, knees hugged to her chest. Her sketchpad was blank. "What's wrong, baby?" She didn't answer at first. Then she whispered, "Daddy was talking to Grandma in the hallway last night." I froze. "What did they say?" Emma looked down. "I don't remember all of it, but Grandma said she won't even see it coming." And Daddy laughed. My stomach turned. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stayed up in the guest room, pretending to read while Linda watched some antique roadshow on TV. She kept glancing at her phone, smiling to herself. At one point, I asked, "Everything okay?" She didn't even flinch. "Just organizing things." When I went back upstairs, I found Emma in my room instead of hers. "I don't want to sleep alone," she said. "I had a dream again." Another dream. She'd been saying that a lot lately. Dreams about fire. About shadows moving in the hall. About someone locking the doors from the outside. I didn't know what to believe anymore. But I knew one thing. My daughter was scared. And I was starting to feel it too. The next day, while Linda went out to run errands, I went into Ethan's office. He had left in such a rush, he forgot to lock the door. His desk was spotless, too clean. Except for one drawer that didn't close all the way. Inside were 2 manila folders. One was filled with estate forms, my mother's accounts, property deeds, investment summaries. The other had documents I hadn't seen before, insurance papers. A new policy. My name. Ethan listed as the sole beneficiary. The policy had been signed 2 weeks after Mom died. I sat there, my breath caught in my throat. And then I heard the front door open. I shoved everything back and closed the drawer. Walked out like nothing happened. Linda was back. With groceries. And a bottle of red wine. "Dinner's on me tonight," she smiled. "You deserve to relax." I looked at the bottle. Then at her. For the first time, I didn't smile back. That night, Emma didn't want to eat. She just sat there, quietly stirring her soup. Linda chatted the entire meal, about her bridge club, about how lovely the lake looked this time of year. She kept filling Ethan's glass, even though he barely touched his food. I excused Emma early and took her upstairs. As I tucked her in, she grabbed my wrist. "Mommy," she whispered. "Don't go downstairs." I frowned. "Why?" She looked straight at me, her eyes wide and unblinking. I heard Daddy again. In his office. He was on the phone. I felt a cold weight settle in my chest. "What did he say?" Emma hesitated, then whispered, "He said the basement locks are ready. And that you wouldn't feel a thing." My mouth went dry. "What else did you hear?" "Grandma told him to do it while you're still grieving. That no one would question it." I tried to stay calm. "Emma, where did you hear this?" I wasn't trying to listen. I was just looking for my pencils. I brushed her hair back, pretending to smile. But inside, I was shaking. After she fell asleep, I went downstairs. Ethan and Linda were in the den. The door was slightly ajar. I heard clinking glasses, then her voice. "Do it while she still trusts you. She won't suspect a thing." I stepped away before I could hear more. I didn't want to know how much they'd planned. I just knew. It was enough. Back in my room, I opened Mom's old jewelry box. At the bottom was the key to the side storage shed. I hadn't touched it since the funeral. Emma stirred in her sleep. "Grandma told me," she mumbled. "There's a way out. In the pantry. Behind the flower bins." I stared at her. "Your grandma," I whispered. She nodded. But not Daddy's mom. My real grandma. The one who was gone. I barely slept. Emma's words echoed through my mind. "You wouldn't feel a thing." I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, waiting for a sound. A creak, a signal that they were moving. But the house stayed still. Quiet. Too quiet. By morning, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to wait for them to make the first move. I got Emma ready like it was any other day. French braid. Backpack. A little sketchbook tucked under her arm. She asked if we were going to school. I said no, we were staying home today, just us girls. Ethan left just after 9. He kissed me on the cheek and said he'd be gone all day. I smiled and said, "Take your time." Linda stayed behind, of course. She had settled into the house like it was hers. Claimed the guest room. Rearranged the pantry. Swapped out the bath towels for ones she brought from her condo. She didn't even ask. Around 11, she announced she was going into town. "Farmer's market," she said. "Maybe we'll do steaks tonight." I nodded, then locked the door behind her. I had maybe 2 hours. I grabbed the folder from Ethan's office, the one with the life insurance documents and the estate forms. I took photos of every page with my phone. Then I took the originals and tucked them into a manila envelope. Slid it into my tote bag. Next, I opened Mom's jewelry box again. At the bottom, Under the velvet lining was a tiny key taped to a folded piece of paper. I had seen it before, years ago, but never knew what it was for. The note read, "Storage shed, right floorboard under the lantern." I grabbed Emma and told her we were playing a game of hide and seek, but grown-up style. She nodded solemnly and followed me outside. The storage shed smelled like dust and cedar. I found the lantern, pulled up the floorboard, and found a metal lockbox. Inside were old documents, a worn envelope, and a flash drive. The envelope had Mom's handwriting on it. I didn't open it yet. I just knew I had to get it out of the house. Back inside, I made 2 copies of the insurance photos, one I sent to my personal email, the other to my lawyer's assistant, marked for backup. Do not open unless I ask. Then I packed a small duffel. Cash, passports, birth certificates, my mom's necklace, Emma's favorite stuffed bunny. We were almost ready. At 2:40 p.m., I heard the front door open. Linda's voice floated through the house. She was talking on the phone. I moved quickly, tucking the bag behind the couch and acting like I was folding laundry. She walked in with flowers and that same hollow smile. "Tonight's going to be lovely," she said. "You'll see." I forced a smile. "I'm sure it will." That night, Ethan came home early. Brought wine. Told Emma he had a surprise for her, but she needed to wait until tomorrow. She didn't say a word. Just stared at him, then at me. After dinner, I gave Emma a warm bath, braided her hair again, and let her sleep in my bed. I didn't sleep. I sat by the door, listening. And at 3:27 a.m., I got the text, "Early meeting canceled." "I'm coming home now." It was Ethan. But he was already home. He never left. I stared at the text on my phone. "Early meeting canceled. I'm coming home now." But Ethan was already here. I had watched him drink wine. Heard him laugh with Linda in the den. So why was he pretending to be elsewhere? My hands trembled. I locked the bedroom door and turned to Emma. She was already awake, eyes wide open, clutching her bunny. "I heard it," she whispered. "The man outside." I moved to the window and peeked through the blinds. A black SUV had pulled into the driveway. A tall man in a dark coat stood outside, holding a phone to his ear. He wasn't moving toward the house, just waiting. Something clicked. He was waiting for a signal. My phone buzzed again. "Make sure she's in bed before I get there." This time, it was from an unknown number. I felt my stomach turn. They weren't just planning something. It was happening. Tonight. I looked at Emma. "We're leaving. Now." I grabbed the bag I had packed earlier, shoved my phone and the flash drive inside, and pulled Emma toward the hallway. Footsteps. Someone was coming up the stairs. "Back," I whispered, and we ducked into the bathroom, locking the door behind us. Linda's voice floated down the hall. "Claire? Are you up, dear?" I didn't answer. A pause, then the sound of her heels moving toward the guest room. I waited 10 seconds, then pulled Emma through the hallway and down the back stairs toward the kitchen. We reached the pantry. Emma pointed to the far shelf. Behind the flour. I shoved it aside. There was a wooden panel, just barely visible. I slid it open, and there it was. A small, square opening, like a dumbwaiter shaft. Only deeper, darker. "This leads to the crawl space," Emma whispered. I dreamed it. I didn't question it. I let her go first, then followed, clutching the bag to my chest. The air was cold and thick with dust. I could barely breathe. We crawled through the narrow tunnel, the wood creaking under us. Behind us, I heard the sound of doors unlocking, mechanized clicks, one after another. The house's smart system. Ethan must have activated it. They were locking the house from the outside. Then came the smell. Gasoline. It hit me like a wave, sharp, chemical, unmistakable. I turned to Emma. "Faster," I said. We crawled until we saw light, faint, yellow, coming from beneath the floorboards of the shed. Emma pushed, and the trapdoor gave way with a groan. We climbed out into the icy night air. The wind hit my face like a slap, but I didn't care. We were out. Behind us, the house was still. Silent. Until the first sound, a hiss, then a low thud. Then flames. The sidewall burst open in a bloom of fire and smoke. Emma screamed. I pulled her into my arms and ran barefoot, across the frozen yard, to Barbara's house 2 lots over. She opened the door in her robe, eyes wide. "Claire, call the police," I gasped. "They tried to kill us." Barbara didn't ask questions. She pulled us inside, locked the door behind us and wrapped Emma in a blanket without a word. Her hands trembled as she dialed 911, giving the address in a voice that barely held together. From her living room window, we watched the flames consume my mother's house. My house. The fire moved fast. Too fast. As if it had help. Within minutes, sirens filled the night. Fire trucks pulled in, their lights painting the snow orange and red. Officers began taping off the property. I watched Ethan's SUV still sitting in the driveway, untouched by the fire. When the paramedics arrived, I insisted Emma was fine. I held her close, heart pounding, eyes scanning every face for Ethan or Linda. They were nowhere. "Ma'am, are you injured?" an officer asked gently. I shook my head. "But I have something you need to see." I pulled out the envelope from my bag, the insurance documents, copies of estate records, Ethan's signature, the policy dated just 2 weeks after my mother died. I handed over my phone, already open to the photo gallery. "And this," I said, offering the flash drive. "It was hidden under the shed. My mother left it." The officer nodded slowly. "We'll take this in." 2 hours later, we were taken to the local station for statements. I told them everything. Not just about the fire, but about the text messages, the voices in the hallway, the gas smell, the locks, the timing, Linda's sudden arrival, the forged documents, and the conversations Emma overheard. I repeated them word for word, just like my daughter had told me. At first, the detectives looked skeptical. But then Emma spoke. With a calm, steady voice, she told them about the hallway whispers, the secret phone call, the blueprints she saw on Daddy's desk, and the dream about the tunnel her grandma showed her. "Not Linda. My mother. She said there was a way out," Emma whispered. And she was right. By morning, the fire marshal confirmed it. Arson. Gasoline residue around the foundation. No sign of a kitchen fire, no faulty wiring. The smart home system had been remotely accessed. Windows and doors had been locked from outside. The evidence lined up. And Ethan? He wasn't at any meeting. He had never even left town. By noon, Ethan had been found at a gas station just outside Montpelier. He claimed he was on his way to a conference. His trunk held 2 suitcases, fake IDs, and over $9,000 in cash. When the officers arrested him, he told them it was all a misunderstanding, that I was unstable, delusional, grieving too hard. At the station, he stuck to that story. Said I was paranoid, that I must have set the fire myself. Until they showed him the text messages. His face changed. When they asked about the insurance policy, he blamed Linda. "She pushed me," he said. Said it was the only way. It didn't take long to track Linda down. She was still at a local cafe, sipping tea like nothing had happened. When they brought her in and told her Ethan blamed her, her mask cracked. "That ungrateful little boy," she snapped. "I protected him. I cleaned up his messes for years. And now this." The investigators listened carefully as she ranted about my incompetence, about how I never truly fit into the family, about the house, the inheritance, the poor decisions I'd made since my mother passed. But then she said something she didn't mean to. If she had just handed over the estate, none of this would have been necessary. Silence. The lead detective leaned forward. "So there was a plan?" Linda blinked, realizing too late. That evening, the officers returned the flash drive. Inside were voice recordings, my mother's. She had begun documenting her conversations with Ethan a few weeks before her death. One clip caught him asking about her investments. Another had her saying, "You're in over your head, Ethan. And I don't trust your intentions with Claire." She never told me. But she knew. She left breadcrumbs, in a lockbox, in a flash drive, in Emma's dreams. It wasn't just fear that guided me out of that house. It was her.